Good evening, it being 6:30, we're going to get started. My name is Jeff Hardy, longtime board member of the Chelmsford Business Association. Good evening and welcome to tonight's candidate forum, sponsored by the Chelmsford Business Association. The Business Association was founded in 1990 by a group of local businessmen with a simple mission: advocate for the fair taxation of the business community. This means charging the same real estate rate set each year for both commercial and residential properties. Besides taxation, the association understands the importance of being a good corporate citizen. We support local nonprofit organizations like the Merrimack Valley Food Bank and the Table of Plenty. We also support community events like the 4th of July Parade and the holiday tree lighting, in addition to providing high school seniors with college scholarships. The association currently represents about 200 members, most of which are local small business owners. If you want to learn more about the CBA or are interested in becoming a member, please visit our website at chelmsfordbusiness.org or call our office at 978-250-3858. On behalf of the association, I want to thank Chelmsford TeleMedia for coordinating tonight's event, as well as the planning board and the select board candidates for their participation. I also want to thank the members of our event committee that I have had the pleasure of chairing: Amanda Lucia, Jim Cullen, Rick Romano, and Lynn Marcella for their time and effort in making this event possible. Without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Amanda Lucia.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, well, thank you, Jeff, for the introduction. I appreciate that. Good evening, everybody, and a special welcome to our candidates. Thank you all for being here tonight. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute to respond to each question. Candidates will be asked questions that were prepared in advance by the Candidates Night Committee, as well as the opportunity to ask one question to one of their fellow candidates. At the end of tonight's program, each candidate will be allowed to make a closing statement that is not to exceed 1 minute. As moderator, the Candidates Night Committee allows me to interrupt a candidate if the answer by that candidate is construed as non-responsive or needs clarification. All right. And tonight we're going to start this evening off with our planning board. Introducing our planning board candidates this evening, we have Doreen Deschler. Thank you, Doreen. Michael Raisbeck. Thank you, Michael. And John Souza. I will now start to read the bios for each of these three candidates here tonight. Doreen is new to the political arena of Chelmsford, but not new to the town of Chelmsford. Her political experience is based on a tradition, upbringing, and an understanding of what we as citizens are supposed to do. She and her family have lived in Chelmsford since 1989. Doreen has been involved in the community from early on, volunteering for both the Chelmsford Little League and Chelmsford Pop Warner. She believes in following the law and in protecting our family neighborhoods and open spaces. Doreen will bring common sense to the table. She promises to keep Chelmsford safe and keep Chelmsford Chelmsford. Thank you, Doreen. And our next candidate tonight is Mike Raisbeck. Mike has lived in the town of Chelmsford for 40 years, raising a family here and putting 2 sons through the Chelmsford school systems. He is currently a town meeting representative for Precinct 8 and on an agricultural commission. For 14 of these 40 years, he has also been a member of the planning board, starting as alternate and then being elected 4 times to the full board. He has served several times as a chairperson. His professional background, education, and experience includes software engineering, engineering management, law, and recently farming. He holds degrees from Northeastern, UMass, and Suffolk Law. Thank you for being here, Mike.
Thank you.
And now to introduce John Souza. John Souza has been a resident of Chelmsford for 57 years. He is a graduate of Chelmsford High School, class of 1984, and was inducted into the Chelmsford CHS Alumni Association Hall of Fame last October. He holds a bachelor's degree in industrial management from the University of Massachusetts Lowell and an MBA from Suffolk University. He has been employed as the Town of Chelmsford's finance director for 15 years. He served as a town meeting representative from 1989 to 2003 and currently serves as a member of the Cemetery Commission. John's family includes his wife, Nancy, and his daughter, Erin. Thank you three for being here tonight. Our first question for the evening. We're going to be starting with Doreen and then going to Michael and then to John. First question for Doreen. What motivated you to run for the planning board? Please explain to the audience what you identify as the most critical action item that you want to address if elected to the planning board.
Okay, what prompted me to run was watching all these 4-story complexes being built and proposals for distribution centers and warehouses in residential areas. That's what prompted me to want to run, because I was seeing Chelmsford going, what I feel, in the wrong direction. What was the second part of it? I'm sorry.
What is the most critical action item that you want to address as a planning board member?
Okay, the most critical action that I would address as a planning board member would be to make sure that all the residents, especially the abutters, are informed in timely manners as to when projects are being proposed for their neighborhoods.
All right, thank you very much, Doreen. And Michael.
Well, 14 years is so long ago, I almost don't remember how I got started on the planning board, but I have a general interest in how the town functions, and with an engineering background, planning board was a natural. I mean, I can read a plan. They taught me that in first year engineering. And I've continued to do it and collect experience, and I'm hoping to give that experience back. As to what's key for the town right now, I think we have to recognize that there are things going on in town that have repercussions that some of us are not too happy with. There's development going on. We cannot stop those things. We can control them, we can moderate them, we can mitigate damage. But the market out there is bigger than we are. So it's a very careful dance, as I see it, of finding middle roads between competing interests.
All right, thank you, Michael. And John.
Yeah, so for several months, I had watched, like many residents in town, the whole hearing process unfold with the proposed distribution center for Riverneck Road. I discussed it with my family, and I heard from many residents, especially in East Chelmsford, in that area. It seemed like they were frustrated that their concerns were not being heard. And so I talked it over with my family, and although I have other responsibilities, I felt it was the right time to get into the race. And I would like to, going forward, I would like to make sure that residents' concerns are heard. So that's my main motivation for entering the race.
All right, thank you, everyone. And for our second question, easy question, starting with Michael, how long have you lived in Chelmsford?
Moved in, I think it was Pearl Harbor Day, 1983. It was 75 degrees in December, and everything was drenched from all the condensation. And I was 40 years younger, so I could actually carry some of this stuff up the front steps.
That's quite some time. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Well, he's got me beat.
Right? All right, John, how long have you lived in Chelmsford?
57 years. You can probably guess my age. So lifelong resident.
Love that. Awesome. And Doreen, how about you?
34 years. I
Awesome.
moved here when my son was a baby.
All right, great. I've lived here since I was born, and you've all had me beat, so thank you. Our third question will start with John. What boards have you served on in the past?
I've served, actually, I'm currently serving as a member of the Cemetery Commission, which is an elected position. If I'm successful on April 4th, because under the charter, a citizen can hold only one elected position, I will resign from the Cemetery Commission. And in the past, I've served as a town meeting representative from about 1989 to 2003 or so. I got started at a young age in my early 20s, so.
Awesome. All right, great, thanks. And Doreen, what boards have you served on?
I haven't served on any boards. Like I said, I have no political experience. This is my first run. Like I said, I just felt like I needed to run it because I didn't like what was happening in my town.
All right, great. Thank you. And Michael?
Well, it's mostly planning board, 14 years of that, including the stint as the newbie. We have one spot on there for almost a planning board member in training. I'm also on the Agricultural Commission. I'm chairman of that currently. That's appointed, not elected. And I'm a town meeting rep.
Awesome. All right, great. Thank you. For our fourth question, we'll be starting with Doreen. After seeing the tax revenue in surrounding towns, would you reconsider bringing a dispensary into Chelmsford?
A dispensary?
Yes.
Right now, I would rather not think about any other developments. If maybe if they're going to go on 129 and one of those empty buildings there, maybe. You mean like a marijuana
Yes.
dispensary? I think we have enough around us. We don't really need it. I mean, we got one in Lowell, we've got one in Dracut. I honestly don't believe that we need one here. But I mean, if it's going to bring in tax revenue, which I doubt, because every time they say tax revenue, you end up paying more in services. So we probably have to put a policeman on duty there for when people come to the dispensary to buy, because I know the one in Lowell always had a policeman there. So now, where's your tax revenue? So I would say no, I would not.
All right. Thank you very much, Doreen. And Michael?
I would. It's, as far as I can tell, a fairly low impact commercial use. I have not heard huge complaints from surrounding towns, although I'm sure there have been a problem here and there. And the state mandates a modest but significant amount of tax revenue that we can extract from anybody running such a dispensary. I think my guess is John probably could give you a better number there. But yes, there's tax money available, and I think it's relatively low impact. So I'd be in favor.
Thank you. And John, your answer.
Yeah, you know, the state left it up to cities and towns to make their own decision based on the ballot vote when marijuana was first legalized for retail sale. And my recollection is that it came before town meeting and it was very soundly defeated. And then the idea came up again and it received a lot of resistance from residents. So in respect to a majority of citizens, I would say no on that.
All right. Thank you guys very much. And for our fifth question of the evening, we'll be starting with Michael. Have you read the town charter, and what did you find most interesting about it?
Well, it is an interesting document. It's got a couple of oddities in it. There's one thing that I've noticed. It's a nit, and it has nothing to do with the planning board. But we do have boards in town with 3 members. Now, a board with 3 members creates problems that some people don't always recognize. Like, 2 members of that board get together, you got an open meeting problem. And I've noted that, and I'd like to see that change. It's a fairly minor change. It would have to be passed at town meeting and make all boards at least 5.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. And then John.
Yeah, the charter, there's a lot of information in there. When I first looked into running for planning board, I reread that section. And one of the things I noticed, the first line is about the powers and duties of the planning board. And it says that the planning board shall make studies of the needs of the town, and then also, of course, regulate zoning. And I think the first part is something we really need to focus on. If I'm elected, I will work towards that, is to make studies of the needs of our town, whether it's infrastructure, various things, because it all ties in with development.
All right. Thank you. And Doreen.
I tend to agree with John that I would also do that, looking to the needs of the town. Right now, I think is what I can see for a need in the town would be elderly housing. I don't see much of a need for much other. I mean, we've got all those empty buildings on 129 that we can fill with commercial or industry. We don't need any new ones. But anything new, I would say the only thing that I can see that we need new that we don't have much of is elderly housing.
All right. Thank you. And for our 6th question tonight, we will have, we'll start with John. As a planning board member, are there any changes you would make to the process that Chelmsford currently uses to approve new developments in town that need special permits?
Not sure that I would make changes. I would want to, as a newly elected member, I would want to see for myself how it works. I will say this, that special permits are there for a reason, and I've said this before publicly. I'm not they are granted under the law. One thing I do think we need to look at, though, is if a development is proposed and comes before the planning board and the project needs 8, 10 or more special permits, then I think we need to scrutinize it a bit and just make sure that a project is not being forced on a site that perhaps may not be the best use for that site.
Okay, thank you. And Doreen?
Again, I tend to agree with John. If a project needs 8 or 10 special permits, and there might be something fishy going on, and you need to look more deeply into it. But I think you should look deeply into all special permits to make sure that what they're asking isn't something that is, not going to be to the appeal of the neighborhood.
All right, thank you very much. And Michael?
They're both right. The process for hearing on special permits can get long, and on one hand, we have people that complain that the process takes way too long. On the other hand, if you're going to give the consideration to all the stuff that needs to be considered, you need to take some time. The point about projects with lots and lots and lots of special permits, there is some validity there. On the other hand, very large projects, a major business complex on a big piece of land with a lot of variables could easily have that many, or at least 6 or 8, and that it wouldn't surprise me. I think what's more important to keep your eyes on is exactly what they're asking for in each permit.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And our 7th question is when our candidates can ask a question to each other. So the first question to be asked will be a question from Doreen to Michael.
Okay. What's more important for our town right now? Building new homes and commercial space, or better utilizing our existing homes and commercial space?
Well, we are very close to developed out anyway, so almost anything that we do is going to involve making use of space that's already being used for something else. That's the guide that we're going to have to use. In terms of virgin land for development, there is almost none.
All right, thank you. And Michael to John?
Gee, what would I ask you? Just a general question, more a philosophical one than anything else. What do you see as the purpose and scope of the public hearings on special permits? And I focus on what a public hearing delivers to the process.
I think the public hearing process is important because you need to have, as the planning board, both sides, the proponent and any opponents, come in and describe. You would need to have the proponent of the project lay out for the board why they are seeking the special permit, and then you would also need to hear from any opponents that may have concerns with the planning board granting a special permit.
All right, great, thank you. And John to Doreen.
Doreen, if you were elected, could you discuss an idea on how you think the planning board hearing process might be improved?
Good question.
Well, the public hearings, I think we need to make sure that the public knows that there is a public hearing and that they need to be there to speak their opinions and let us know what they're thinking, so that we don't go ahead with something and then they come in afterwards all mad and angry because we went through with something. So I would make sure that the public knows about the hearings and that they're there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for each participating in this. And now we'll have each candidate have a closing statement, which cannot exceed more than 1 minute. So could we first start with our closing statement from Doreen?
Sure. I'm running on a common sense platform as I have no political experience. I decided to run, like I said, when I saw the 3-story complexes and the proposals for the warehouses and distribution centers near residential areas in my town. The planning board strives to guide land last, but use management that preserves the character and integrity of the town. This is the mission statement of the planning board, and I would like to ensure that it follows its own mission statement. In the master plan of 2020, it also states how best to move forward in a way that promotes economic prosperity without sacrificing the natural, historical, and cultural integrity of the community. I believe strongly in both of these statements and will always work for the residents of Chelmsford. And last but not least, I will favor current businesses over doing special permits and overlays so that they don't get preferred treatment over established businesses. I ask you, the voters of Chelmsford, for one of your 2 votes on April 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen. All right, and Michael, for your closing statement.
Sure. Well, let me point out that the planning board has 2 distinct functions. One is a planning function, and one is the administration of the zoning bylaws of the town. So I'll answer 2 questions here. As a planner, I strive for something of a middle path, something that allows for the inevitable development, and there will be development. The market forces that, but to apply controls as allowed by the bylaws and to moderate the process, steer the development, and mitigate as best we can the negative effects. On the administration side, it's very simple. It's my personal objective to impartially apply the bylaws of the town as they were written, as they were approved, and as they were intended.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And John.
I want to thank the Chelmsford Business Association for organizing this event this evening. If you want a candidate who is committed to protecting our neighborhoods and will not ever support urbanizing Chelmsford, I respectfully request one of your 2 votes for Planning Board on Tuesday, April 4th. John Souza, number 1 on the ballot. Thank you.
Well, Doreen, Michael, and John, thank you so much for participating.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Our candidates for the planning board, everybody in Chelmsford, and reminder, vote on April 4th. All right, so I would like to give a special thank you for our select board candidates for being here this evening. We have Ken, Rodney, and Erin here this evening. I'll introduce them soon with their bios. We also have Charles Mooney, who is not able to be with us tonight. He's out of the country, but we'll be reading his bio too, so everyone knows who he is. There are 4 candidates seeking to win one of the available positions for Select Board. So at this time, I will read each prospective bio. Kenneth Lefebvre. Residing in Chelmsford since 1993, with his wife, Chris, and 4 boys, Sean, Joe, Eric, and Matthew, Ken is an elected member of the town's Board of Selectmen and currently serves the board's vice chair. In addition, he sat on the Master Plan Update Committee and the Master Plan Implementation Committee. He is a liaison to several boards and several committees in town. Ken supports and volunteers in various local charities, including the Paul Center and Chelmsford Open Space. Most recently, Ken became a member of the 6th Middlesex Regiment of Minutemen. Ken is a partner of Crosspoint Financial Advisors, LLC, with his brother Mark. With over 31 years of experience, Ken provides sound financial planning advice to individuals and business owners. Ken's education is that he's a certified financial planner with several licenses and certifications. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Economics and Finance from Bentley University. And when time allows, Ken enjoys gardening until recently raising chickens and attending to his beehives. Thank you, Ken. And now I'll introduce Rod Cleaves. While living in Maynard, I served on the Zoning Board, Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals. After moving from Maynard to Chelmsford in 1994, Elaine and I blended our families. In Chelmsford, we concentrated on our family and many foster children. I retired from the Veterans Administration in 2020. The Nonpartisan Select Board is the policy oversight board, while the town manager holds oversight over day-to-day operations. Vote on April 4th and check this box next to my name. Donate. Campaigns are expensive and advertise. Would you put a sign on your yard? Thank you. Thank you, Rod. Appreciate it. All right, and lastly, Erin Drew. Erin Drew lives in Chelmsford with her husband and 3 young children who attend public schools here in town. She is a member of the Chelmsford Mothers Club and is involved in various town sports organizations. Erin has a professional background in international trade compliance and logistics and is a licensed customs broker, a license issued by the Department of Homeland Security. Erin is currently a town meeting representative and has been a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for over 4 years. Erin would like to bring this experience to the Select Board and use it to help her town plan proactively for the future. Thank you for being here. And I would like to read Charles's bio as well. Charles is our last Select Board candidate who could not be here today. Charles Mooney is a 37-year resident of Chelmsford, currently employed as a Senior Director of Global Trade Compliance at Xylem Inc. He is a U.S. licensed custom broker. His education includes a bachelor's degree in biology from Boston College, a master's degree in chemical engineering from the University of Massachusetts Lowell, and an executive MBA from Suffolk University. His experience includes regulated compliance, research and development, operations, and marketing. He is an effective decision maker and organizer based upon fact-based analytically and practically in analysis. He learns and contributes quickly in new situations, rapidly assimilates new information. He has coached youth sports in Chelmsford, served on boards including Youth Chelmsford Basketball Leagues, Chelmsford Girls Softball Leagues, St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Church, Lexington Little League, and International Compliance Professional Athletes Association, Inc. Currently chair of the Executive Compensation Review Committee. He is married with 2 adult children and 1 granddaughter. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. And we'll begin with our first question, starting with Ken and then going to Rodney and moving to Erin and rotating from there. Our first question tonight for Ken. What motivated you to run for the Select Board? Please explain to the audience what you identify as the most critical action item that you want to address if elected to the Select Board.
Sure. So my, I'm going to probably change it around a little bit because I'm rerunning for the Select Board. So I'll tell you what motivated me to rerun, which I think is a different decision than running. The reason why I decided to rerun, and I know it was last minute, but it's hard to walk away after 6 years with everything that was going on in town. We were making great headway in the redevelopment of the Center District. We have incredible success out on 129. When I first ran and got elected, one of my main goals was hiring a business development director. 4 of us wrote that job description and hired her. We were told by the development directors in Burlington, who we spoke to, Nashua, Marlboro, and Billerica, that it was going to take 6 to 8 years for her really to have an effect. We're starting to see that effect. So that process is exciting to me, and I want to see it through. And probably the biggest challenge we have is our sewer capacity issue.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And Rodney.
To be honest with you, my motivation goes back to 1969 when I was a senior in high school. I had a history teacher who also taught civics and just burned a love of that into us. I wish they taught civics like he did now. And like my bio said, when I moved to Maynard, I got steeped in small town politics. I was on the zoning board, I was on the planning board and the CBA. Moving here, I just didn't have the opportunity. We were too busy with our family. In 2020, I retired and wanted to jump in with both feet right then and there. Last summer, I ran for state representative and found that while I was vanquished, I loved the process. And I've been watching what's been going on in this town. I initially got in because of River Neck Road. And then the more I looked around, the more I talked with my neighbors, what I've discovered is there's a number of issues that I want to get involved with. And right now, Ledge Road is the bane of my existence. And while the Select Board's been doing a great job with it, I want to stay with it and push it and maybe come up with some new ideas that haven't been considered or have been, maybe needs to be reconsidered.
All right, thank you very much. And Erin.
Thanks, Amanda. So I have young kids in town. My husband and I moved here to raise them here, and this is our forever home. So I think that I'm vested in our community. And for the 4.5 years that I've been involved in our municipality, I've been on the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm a town meeting rep. I've been involved with the Chelmsford Mothers Club. And, I really love this work. I find it challenging. I love working with the public. I love meeting everybody in this town. And I would like to continue to do that in a larger capacity. And I'd like to continue to help my neighbors and my family and my friends here in town. And, because I have that experience, to Ken's point, I think there is something to be said for having people who have been involved. But, I've been involved, so I think that I can really kind of hit the ground running on the select board and take the reins over and be effective there.
All right, great. Thank you guys very much. Our second question for the evening, we'll start with Rodney and then move to Erin and then Kenneth. Do you think it is fair to use tax classification to overcharge the commercial and industrial property owners by shifting the tax burden? Please explain your position.
In a word, no, I don't. I'm in favor of a tax for everybody equally. And the simple process is I love the idea that I get to save about $180 or $200 a year, paying a lower rate than the commercial industrial properties. But that money, for the most part, is going to come out of our pocket anyway, because if you've followed economics in any fashion, I'm sure Ken I hope you would agree with me, corporations and businesses don't necessarily pay taxes. They pass it on to us. So we're going to end up paying more anyway. I've never been in favor of the SIPS tax. And there's little I can do about it, although I'd like to look at it and maybe at least keep the offset as low as possible. But no, I never envisioned that. When you start building in taxes that are unique to someone, or special interest taxes, because you're charging more to one group of people than you are another, it's never fair.
All right, thank you very much. Erin?
I think the reality is that we are a split tax community. That was implemented. And I've spoken to a lot of people in the business community who have expressed to me their frustration with that, particularly at the time that it was implemented. It was, I think, a little bit of a surprise, and a little bit of, maybe a smack in the face, frankly, for some of them. And, I sympathize with that. But at this point in time, I feel like reversing that and going straight back to a flat tax would be exactly the same thing for our residents. For them, that would be a little bit of a big surprise and a little bit of a slap in the face. So, at the end of the day, I think it's reviewed every year, and it needs to be reviewed very carefully and considered.
All right, thank you very much, Erin. And Ken?
Sure. So it's really not a 1-minute answer, but I'll try to talk as fast as I can and get as much in. You got to remember that when we discuss the split tax rate, there's actually 3 entities or parts involved. It's the business owner, it's the property owner, and it's the resident. So when we talk about splitting the tax rate, it does hit the property owner, but not necessarily always hits the business owner, depending upon if they're in a triple net lease or a flat monthly net lease. So we've done a lot of studies. I've made this decision now for 6 years on the tax rate in the town. I've looked at how other towns do it across the Commonwealth. I've looked at the studies that have been done by financial institutions in other countries and in the U.S. And basically it comes down to the vacancy rate in the town, the demand in the town for the rents, and what can be passed on. When you have high vacancy rates, a split tax rate only works to make the vacancy rate go higher and cause your buildings to fall into disrepair, which in essence, over time, will lower the tax they're paying, which then shifts that tax back to the residents. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it. It works in some cities in Massachusetts, but in Chelmsford, I'm not sure. I see it in the building right here at North Road. You split the rate, and she's not putting as much money as she used to, and the building's falling into disrepair. People are moving out. The tax that you will collect in that building will go down.
All right, thank you, Ken. This takes us to our third question of the evening. We will start with Erin and move to Ken and then move to Rodney. The town of Chelmsford has recently experienced sewage issues due to low capacity with the city of Lowell. For example, if you want to turn a gift shop into a restaurant, the sewage capacity won't allow it. How do you plan on improving this issue? Starting with Erin.
Thanks, Amanda. You know, the sewer issue has been ongoing for quite some time now. Specifically, the gift card shop is your.
Just
Are
an
you
example,
inquiring in
but how
regard
would
to
you
the
plan on-
restaurant
Yeah,
downtown?
that was an example for the audience, but how do you plan to improve?
I mean, that specific example, I think they have specific needs that need to be addressed. In general, I think that the sewer issue is a big issue for the town, but I think that depending on where we want to go with our development, that will gauge what we're going to do with our sewer capacity. And I mean, I think we have other stuff coming down the line also with our water that may feed into that also, the PFAS requirements. So there'll be other things to consider at the same time.
All right, thank you. And Ken?
Sure. So, again, can't do this in a minute, so sorry if I talk too fast. But, so, you know, bringing everybody up to speed, what was done at the gift shop in particular is we don't want, especially with what's going on in the center, to slow down the revitalization of the center. And that, in my opinion, what is proposed to that building, regardless of whatever gets put in there, we don't control what goes in there, but we can control the rehab of the building. The process has to move forward. And so working with the DPW and the town manager, I think we came up with a pretty decent solution where we're going to use some funding, payment in lieu of, from the developers to go into a fund, and that money will be used to try to find infiltration that's going on into our system currently. And as we find that extra capacity, that will be then given to the property owner. So that's the short-term solution. But again, there are other longer-term solutions that go out maybe 10 years. But I think this is a good short-term solution so that we can revitalize our center and get that process done.
Awesome, thank you. All right, and Rodney?
Thanks. As I understand it, and this is what was said to me by someone who's smarter than I am, there is a way to purchase sewer credits or whatever else you may call it. If you need to increase your capacity going into the sewer system, you can place a bond and purchase low-flow systems in other places that are currently using high-flow systems. And on another thing, I heard recently that someone's floating a proposal for a sewage treatment plant somewhere in town, or possibly a regional sewage treatment plant that we can share with someone else. I have no idea where you'd put that. And I've worked around sewage treatment plants. They're no fun to be anything close to. I'm not sure if that's the way to go either, but it's clearly, we pushed sewer for everybody years ago. And I think it sounded like a great idea, but we had no idea it was ever going to reach capacity this quickly. Duck Island's done. I mean, we can go there, but we can't put any more in there. The only way we're going to be able to do it is either divert sewer systems now or simply get some low-flow systems into people's homes so that there's less sewage to get rid of.
All right, thank you very much. That takes us to our fourth question of the night, starting with Ken and then moving to Rodney and moving to Erin. Many surrounding towns have banned alcoholic nips from their liquor stores in an attempt to prevent littering in town. Would you suggest this for the town of Chelmsford as well?
So we just had our hearing on NIPS, and I mean, for my personal goal there was to raise awareness of the issue. I know as I walk to Starbucks on Saturday mornings down Parker Street, there are empty, you're not supposed to call them nips, but little alcohol bottles all over the road. And I don't buy the fact that selling those helps control an alcoholic's intake. So I didn't buy into that argument, but I would say that the goal, I think for me, was to raise awareness, send a message out to the owners of the liquor stores to basically say, speak to your customers, let them know, that they've got to do a better job because they're leaving the liquor stores, and we do see, more on the streets around the liquor stores, and they dissipate as you travel away. So George Dixon on the board made a great point. They know who's buying them. They're coming in at 5 o'clock on the way home from work, usually every day. We spoke to some of them. Talk to them. Just tell them, stop throwing them out the windows or there may be a problem. Boston's considering it too, so we're not the only ones, but we're just trying to reduce the amount of trash in the town.
Okay, thank you. And Rodney?
Well, you hate hearing this, but I agree with Ken 100%. but I'm going to put my little spin on it as well. A story I've told many of you is when I'm out putting up my lawn signs or when I'm with the Boy Scouts picking up trash, I have a bunch of bags in the trunk of my car, and I try to police the area from litter wherever I put up a lawn sign. I hate litter. Boy, do I ever hate litter. And you know what those nips are all about. Someone buys 4 or 5 nips on the way home from work, they want to drink them and throw them out the window as quick as they can so their wife or husband doesn't catch them when they get home. But nobody wants to say that. But that's why they end up on the side of the road. You know, you come home, you go, excuse me, honey, I got to go throw these away. It's not going to happen. No, I would not be in favor of banning them. It's a freedom of speech issue, if you will, or a rights issue. I don't know what you might call it. But like Ken said, raise awareness, talk to the store owners, talk to the people if you can, give them flyers. I know I go to a store every day where someone's in front of me buying 5 nips. I know they're going to be gone by the time they get home. And when I'm friendly with them, I try to say something. But then again, it's hard. It's hard to say something to someone.
All right, thank you. And Erin.
I sat in the select board meeting a couple of weeks ago where they talked about this, and I think there were two conversations that came out about the NIPS, and one was whether or not they are enabling alcoholism in town, and the other was about litter. And the enabling alcoholism conversation, I feel like, is a little bit out of the depth of the select board, to be honest. I don't know that I think that that's a conversation that we need to be having. I don't think that that's in our purview. But the litter, I think that is. I don't think that banning nips is necessarily the solution. And I don't think that that is something that I would support, but I would work with the liquor store owners to find some sort of solution or to ask them to find a solution themselves. And as a resident of East Chelmsford, Sprague, the liquor store over in East Chelmsford, is a particular problem area. And I've noticed it's worse than some of the other areas in town that have been discussed also. I think it's maybe anecdotal.
Yeah, what she said.
Yeah, it's particularly bad.
We're in the same neighborhood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Erin. All right, well, that takes us to our 5th question of the evening. We will start with Rodney and move to Erin and then move to Kenneth. Have you read the town charter, and what did you find most interesting about it?
Town charter. Yes, I have read it. And I was going to read it again this afternoon in anticipation of this question, and I never got around to it. What I found interesting about the town charter, and I don't have enough institutional knowledge to know if it's this way in other towns, but what surprised me is how many important committees and boards are not accountable to the select board. If the select board is going to be the executive policy and decision-making board for the town, why is the planning board, no disrespect, Mike, why is the planning board completely on its own? Or the school committee, except for when budget time comes up? There should be a little bit more crossover, maybe not direct reporting responsibility, but the select board's, it's a very busy board, has a lot of things on its plate. And if the number one thing is to hire a town manager who's got day-to-day operational control. But I believe that there should be, and we're not going to change the charter tomorrow, a little bit more overlap between the various boards and committees reporting to the principal authority.
Thank you, Rodney. And Erin?
So, yes, in the charter states that the select board is the chief policy-making agency of the town. And, I also find this definition to be interesting because I think the interpretation of that can be very different. One of the things that I've had several discussions about is what exactly are those policies that we're making as a select board, or that our select board is making. And that's something that I think should perhaps be clarified a little bit. I've talked to several people who don't even understand what the select board does in town. And I think it would be nice to make it clear that is a policy-making board, but it is also a leadership board. And that we should work with the other committees and boards in town underneath us to provide leadership to them and to provide a sense of unity among all of our boards and committees. So,
Great, thank you. And Ken?
Sure. I feel a little bit of the upper hand. I actually carry a copy of the charter with me in my little black book here. But so I think, and I was wondering. I was like, is she going to ask us that question? So I think in section 1.3 of the charter, they talk about the division of power. But I remember reading this the first time because I thought this was odd or interesting. But under section 1.3, it says the executive board is the select board and the town manager, and you have administration of all, administrative, municipal, and I forget the word they use. It was prudential affairs of the town. And I was like, well, what does prudential mean? And when you look it up, it's prudence of finances. And I thought that was interesting that they actually put that burden on the power of the select board, that we have to be prudent with the finances of the town. And so a lot of the decisions I look at are how does this financially affect the town? And so I thought that was interesting. That's written into the charter that we have to have financial prudence when we make our decisions.
Awesome. Thank you. You have it indexed out for us, too. So that's great. Perfect. All right, our sixth question of the evening, starting with Erin, moving to Ken, and moving to Rodney. One of the responsibilities as a select board member is to review, hire, retain, or terminate the town manager. For the last 2 years, the town manager has been serving without an extended contract. What is your view as to how to best resolve this so that we can, both with the current town manager and the board, can plan for the future? Please explain your position, Erin.
Generally speaking, I think that our current town manager does a pretty decent job. I understand that there have been some issues, obviously, over the past few years. And, I don't have all the information. I'm not on the select board yet. There is a lot of executive sessions that go on, and I'm not privy to all of that information. I also have not worked directly in a lot of capacity with the town manager, so I don't have very much of a personal relationship with him. But, I do think, from what I understand, there is still one pending matter, and I think that should be seen through to its end. But I do think that process should be expedited to the extent that it can be, to whatever extent that it can be. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Erin.
Sure.
And Ken?
Sure. So to that point, the process is out of our hands. It can't be expedited, and there's nothing we can do on that issue. So when you look at the town manager, Mark Carrata, I think, had a great point when he was elected, and he said part of the problem that he sees the current board having with the town manager is he's not probably being managed. And as I gave that thought, because I'm open to everything, I had these conversations with Mark, and I said, all right, I'll go back and think about it. And he had a lot of one-term select board members. And one term, when you get to the end of your 3 years, you're just figuring it out. And if you have all these one-termers that are just figuring it out, coming in with their guns firing, it made a mess. So to that end, I think step one to solving the manager's contract is we hear the end of the court case. Going back to the definition of the select board, prudence of financial matters. If the case comes back and something, I don't know what the outcomes could potentially be, but if they come back and there's something in there that requires termination of a contract, the current contract we were given to sign entitles them to 1 year severance if fired for cause. So you can't give a contract when there's a pending court case if you potentially could be writing a check out 3 months later for $220,000. So that's step one. And I will say my relationship with the town manager has gotten a lot better. He and I talk more often, and we share. So I think we're working towards that.
All right, thank you very much. And Rodney?
Thank you. Never having served on the select board, I'm with Erin on that. We haven't been in the executive sessions. We don't know what's going on. I hear things. I've been out knocking on doors for 3 months, getting papers signed, asking people their opinion. And I've talked with some people who want me to immediately terminate him, and I've talked with other people who say if you keep him, you should. I've 3 times in my career, I've had several people who work for me. My last job was as the chief information officer at the Bedford VA, and I had a staff of 40 people. And some of my employees did a great job nearly all the time, and some of my employees were 50-50, and you had to write a review at the end of the year. It's a mess. And that may be where we are now. As far as I'm concerned, everything's on the table. Everything's examinable. I want to know more about the situation that I'm currently not privy to. From what I understand, it's a 50-50 shot from the people I've talked to. I have to make up my own mind about that, but I am going in with an open mind and ready to discuss and find out about what's going on. I've met with Mr. Cohen several times, and we get along famously. There's many things he's done that I'm in complete agreement with.
All right, thank you. That actually brings us to our 7th and final question, where our candidates can ask a question to each other. So we'll begin with Ken asking a question to Rodney.
Oh.
Oh, great. You don't have to.
Yes, you do.
Question to Rodney. So, all right, I guess, Rodney, we just looked at the town budget, and the town manager is proposing that we use $780,000 of the levy to to fill up that budget. Then that may change, but what do you think what's your feelings on the effect that will have on the average citizen's tax bill?
I don't see where it's going to have much of an effect, but I'm curious. That levy goes into the general fund, or is it earmarked?
It's the the levy is part of our budget.
Right, okay. I don't see where it's going to have much of an effect when you have a, what are we up to now? About 140, 150,000, a million budget, something like that. $780,000 could be used for community improvements, maybe some places in town, maybe the various district commissions like the Conservation Commission, maybe the Historical Society could use it. And in things like that would benefit the entire town, I'd be in favor of doing it. And I don't know, honestly, what kind of tax effect it would have. If we can put that money to good use like that, I'll spend a few extra bucks, but I mean a few. $4 or $5 extra a year would be fine.
It's about $70 a year to your tax bill.
Well, let's talk more.
$55 a bill to your
We'll
tax
talk
bill.
more. We'll talk more about that when the time comes.
All right, well, Rodney, you can ask a question to Erin now.
To Aaron, I didn't have one prepared for Aaron. I was going to decline. I'm required to. Is that it? Let's see, Aaron. What can I do? What can I do? All right. In the interest of levity and a little bit of stupidness, Aaron, what do you listen to in the car when you're out driving by yourself?
That's a great question, Rod. Thank you for asking that. I listen to a wide variety. I have country music on there. I definitely have some old school hip hop that I dance to at red lights, if any of you have seen me with my children a lot. There's some Peppa Pig DVDs that play regularly.
My daughter loves that.
Yeah. It's a very wide variety of musical entertainment in my minivan these days. Thank you for asking, Rod.
Please don't
I
dock
like
me
that,
for that,
right?
Amanda.
No, I like mixing it up. That was awesome. Perfect. And Erin, you can ask a question to Ken.
Sure, Ken, I have a question prepared. I don't have the charter in my notebook, but I do have a question. What is the hardest decision you've ever had to make during your time on the select board?
Probably our flag policy. That's the one I struggled most over.
That's a hard one.
I understand where, and it keeps coming back around because we have so many great causes that want to come to town, and we've been asked, by the Armenian group to fly their flag. We've been asked for, 3 or 4 different occasions to fly a flag for a special event, and it's hard to stick to that no policy. I don't know if anybody's aware, but we basically fly the federal flag, the state flags, and then departmental, police, fire, POW. And we're limited to just that. It's gotten a little crazy across the country. You fly one flag, and the next thing you know, you're having events on the common and all kinds of flags being flown. And so we took a hard stance on it, and I feel for the people that are with these requests, but every time it breaks my heart to say no.
All right, thank you very much. Well, that brings us to our closing statements for each candidate, and we'll start in the same order we've been going in. So, Ken, would you read your closing statement?
Sure. I'll start off by thanking everyone for coming, and I apologize for the red light and the bell. And thank you to the CBA for hosting. I really appreciate it. So I'm running because of my passion for the town, for the families and friends that I have that live here. I thrive on being service to others. I was raised that way by my father and my mother. They raised me and my 8 siblings to do everything we can for our community. The residents of this town can testify to my commitment. For the last 6 years, I've learned deep aspects of the communities and boards, the processes and the people involved. I've learned the personalities and what it takes to get something done. When I take on a challenge, it's not on a whim, and it's not with partial energy. It's with 100%, and I come in boring, blazing, and I'm on fire with all of my heart. There are many people in this room, and if you read stuff on Facebook, you can see what I'm saying is true. If you call me, I usually answer, and if I don't, I return the call within just a few hours. They can tell you I'm honest and I'm transparent in my actions. I'll tell someone when I don't agree. I keep an open mind. I listen to their points, and many times my mind's been changed. In either case, I'm always there to help. The town is facing a lot of serious issues right now. Knowing the rules and procedures and finding outside-the-box creative solutions is what I do best. I've done it for 30 years with my client, and the town has some big issues coming, and we need to solve those. It's a quality of life for a diverse community, critical infrastructure impacting our schools, sewer and roads, and planning with collaborative execution and maintaining trust and transparency.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And Rodney?
Thank you. I like that you said passion. I have to give you credit for that. People think I'm not passionate because my affect is kind of subdued most of the time. I appreciate the time and effort required to host this, so thank you very much. I'm going to say a fate of geography leaves Chelmsford in a unique position. We're primarily a residential town with 5 historic districts. Many major and secondary routes pass through and around our town and around our boundaries. They're attractive to industry, and we couple that with well over 20 large residential communities. It's a balance, and I'm up to the challenge. We want to preserve our New England heritage without stifling our progress. It's the candidate with the intelligence, spirit, and drive that you're hiring for this position. Please make your choice carefully. I promise to be visible and accessible for the entire time that I have a term. I ask for your help this April 4th. Your vote would be nice. I'm second on the ballot. And I'm also going to throw this in. The 3 of us are going to be on WCAP in the morning at 9 o'clock, if you want to tune in.
I think Chuck's going to be there too.
Oh, great.
I
No, I hope
sold
he
all
is.
4. Yeah.
I hope he is. And so listen in and you'll get one last crack at us.
Thank you for that.
I'm wearing my pajamas, guys.
I am
It's
not-
not
I-
televised, right?
It's not going to be a coat and tie for me, I can tell you that.
Awesome. I agree.
You're going to be
Thanks.
sued on a work day?
And Erin?
Hi. So thank you, Amanda. I want to thank the CBA for hosting this, and for those here. There's a lot of you. Wow. And of course, everybody watching from home, and my family. My aunt and my cousin are here supporting me tonight. And you know, one of the things that I want to display up here is what makes me different from the other amazing candidates who are running for this office. And you know, I can talk to you about my professional experience, the fact that I have a regulatory background, my experience on the ZBA, that I'm a town meeting rep, that I have kids in town, that I'm vested. But you know, I want to share a little bit of something personal about me. So I grew up in this really massive family, and a couple of weeks ago, one of my uncles passed away. And you know, he was very much the patriarch of my extended family. And you know, it got me thinking a lot about my upbringing and my grandparents' table that I sat at holidays, and the fact that I have these loud, boisterous uncles. We grew up debating, frankly, our whole lives. You'd think I'd be better at it. But you know, the thing that I learned sitting there was to be a listener, a learner, and a leader. And I think as a select board member, I'll be a leader for our town. So with that in mind, I respectfully ask for your vote on April 4th.
But at
Thank
least
you.
vote.
But at least vote, please.
Great.
Everyone vote.
Exactly. Everybody,
Yes.
please vote. Thank you to our participants tonight. This has been incredible. Thank you, Chelmsford TeleMedia, and the Lowell Sun is here as well. Thank you so much for being here. And yes, a reminder, everybody, please vote on Tuesday. And have a great evening.
Thank you.